This is episode number 191. Today we're featuring French artist Antonin Passemard.
This is the PleinAir Podcast with Eric Rhoads, publisher and founder of PleinAir Magazine. In the PleinAir Podcast, we cover the world of outdoor painting. Called PleinAir, the French coined the term, which means open air or outdoors. The French pronounce it plein air. Others say plein air. No matter how you say it, there is a huge movement of artists around the world who are going outdoors to paint. And this show is about that movement. Now, here's your host, author, publisher, and painter, Eric Rhoads.
Well, hey there, and welcome to the PleinAir Podcast, everybody. Everybody, and I mean everybody. I've got like 70 countries around the world listening now. Thank you, everyone who's listening. I hear from people who say they listen in their studios while they're painting. Some listen in their cars. You know, they listen on walks. If that's you, thank you. And wherever you're listening, I really appreciate it. Love to get to know you. You can follow me on Instagram at Eric Rhoads or on Facebook at Eric Rhoads. Now, I can't follow you back on Facebook because I've got my limit on friends and I haven't done the public thing. I don't know why. I probably should. Anyway, I would love to have you do that. I've been doing some painting, doing a lot of painting. I post some pictures up on Facebook of some of the things I do from time to time. Anyway, want to remind you of a couple of things. There's still time for Realism Live. It's coming up on the 21st, and the 20th is the Basics Day, Beginner's Day. We have some incredible painters, a world-class lineup that'll never happen again like this. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. It is going to blow you away. It's worth the time. It's just going to be making everybody get to the next level of painting. It's absolutely incredible. And if you can't make the dates, you can still attend and get the replays. Anyway, you got to get them before we end, and that's Realism Live. Just go to realismlive.com. I am around the corner getting ready to head to New Hampshire, the White Mountains, and going to paint there for a week. Do 2-3 painting spots a day, every day for a week with artist Eric Capel. Also painting fall color of the White Mountains where the Hudson River School of Painters painted, and it's an absolutely incredible thing. And so you want to be part of that, and we do have seats, but you got to hurry because your hotel might be sold out here any minute. It's normally we would be sold out, 6 months in advance, and we were, but unfortunately because of COVID, that all changed. Anyway, coming up in PleinAir Magazine, the October-November issue, which just came out, has Don Bishop's acrylic Misty Green Field on the cover. You're going to check that out. There's a guest blog post this week, and John Hughes has one of our former podcast guests on Do You Paint What You Love or Do You Paint What You Think Will Sell? That's a piece that's in the PleinAir Today newsletter this week, and you can check that out. Just go to outdoorpainter.com to get it. Coming up after the interview, I'm going to be answering art marketing questions in the Marketing Minute. But first, let's get to our interview with Antonin Passemard. He's a plein air artist who lives in France, studied in Russia. He's an absolutely incredible artist. I think you're going to enjoy it. Antonin Passemard, welcome to the PleinAir Podcast.
Thank you, Eric.
Well, it's a pleasure to talk to you. You're over in France. Where in France are you?
Well, I live in Burgundy, in the wine region, close to Chablis.
And is that where you grew up?
Yeah, that's where I grew up, in a city not far away from the village I live now. Yeah.
Lovely. Well, some of us got to know you when you were on PleinAir Live. You did a fabulous demo from your village, and thank you for doing that.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, it looks lovely. I'll have to come over and paint there someday.
You're welcome anytime, yeah.
So tell me a little bit about your background. How did art begin for you?
That's a good story. Well, my parents were not artists. And but somebody in my family was a hobby painter, and he taught me a few things when I was very young. So as soon as I could, I signed up to go to the Beaux-Arts school in my hometown, in Auxerre. And this is how everything started. I started to paint in the Beaux-Arts and discovered artists, went to museum, and the love kept growing.
And it keeps growing still, I would imagine, right?
And it keeps growing still, of course, yes. Of course, the story is very long because after I also moved to United States and discovered also this renewal start of plein air painting, which was very, very interesting to me because then in my later teen years, I studied in a Beaux-Arts school in Paris. But some teachers were still teaching some, let's say, classical painting skills, but a lot of it was about, let's say, installation and modern art and contemporary art. And I was more interested into this this more realistic or expressionist way of painting. And I thought it was possible to do it still now and be interesting. And I saw this renewal in United States, and it was very interesting to be there and to experience it. And then later, I moved to Russia, and I studied a bit at the Repin Academy, and also I studied with some people who studied there. Mm-hmm.
Now, my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's very difficult to get into the Repin Academy. The standards are very high, and in order to get in, the artists who get in are already at a higher level than most artists ever will be. Is that correct?
Yes, it is very hard to get in. There is like a prep school to get in before, and to enter it, it is very hard because you need to have some drawing knowledge and some painting knowledge, which is usually most people who enter it did an art school before. You don't just come like that, yes.
Well, and I understand there are hundreds of applications and very few people actually accepted.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So you had to, you paint very, very differently today than probably the acceptance that you had to go through, right? You have to be classically trained and know how to know your anatomy and draw and paint in very classical style to be able to get in. Is that correct?
Yes, it is correct.
Yes.
It is correct.
Right. And the style that you've developed now, which is very, very impressionistic, very much looser and so on, is that something that you developed while you were there? Is it, because I know they want each person to find their own voice. Was that something that came from your training there, or was it something that came afterwards?
Well, actually, it was something I liked before, and it is something which is very common, let's say, in Russia, because the Soviet school, like painters like Belyaev, Varechev, Zagonek, or Rehit, who was also a teacher in the atelier, before my time, of course. But they were very bold painters.
Yes,
this,
they were.
this Soviet Impressionism is a very bold way to paint. So there is a big difference between the academic learning and the progress as an artist. Yes.
Well, and most Americans, or many Americans, are not familiar with this Russian impressionistic style, and it looks easy, but it's actually very difficult to accomplish and make it look right, I think.
Absolutely.
And you come from a lineage of some pretty incredible artists that most Americans could stand to study and learn from. Who are some of the artists that, if somebody were to Google some names just to get a feel for some of the great Russian Impressionists? You said them all very quickly. I know you talked about Repin, and obviously he is the great master. But who else are some of the names?
Well, there is two periods really in Russian, let's say, Impressionist school.
Yes.
There is post-Soviet, pre-Sovietic, and the Sovietic one. And let's say before the Soviet time, I would say Levitan, of course, Igor Grabar was very, very good and studied in France, actually, with some Impressionists. Serov, Valentin Serov,
yep,
and Quingy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, Levitan's work to me, even seeing it in person, looks very traditional to me.
Yes, well, it is, let's say, it is Impressionist, like Corot can be Impressionist for the French, in a sense that they started really to paint plein air. And they started to get this atmosphere of nature that was never done before. And in this way, they are let's say the start of Impressionism, in a sense that they were really trying to capture the atmosphere of the time, the light and things like that. Mm-hmm.
So I was under the impression that the Soviets were doing plein air painting before the Impressionists were.
I don't know about that, but it's probably true. It is probably true.
Well, we have. I don't know. I don't know exactly the years, but I know that I have a picture of a painting. There's a famous painting of Repin and his students at the Academic Adasha. And I'm not sure the timeline in terms of Repin and compared to the Impressionists. It'd be interesting to look at that. But clearly they were going outdoors.
Yeah, clearly, absolutely. Yeah, they were all going outdoors, and this was a big step forward, of course, for our style of painting, because instead of those landscapes who were in the background and a bit dark and a bit fake, they started to be more alive, and they started to pay more attention to trees and the landscape itself. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Well, I just looked up while we were talking, and Monet and Repin was born in 1844, Monet in 1840. Repin died in 1930, Monet died in 1926. So they really were contemporaries.
Absolutely, yes. Mm-hmm.
Interesting. So the one thing that I was really fascinated with, I was originally approached by a gallery owner who is a dealer in Russian paintings, and he said to me, Eric, you need to study Russian paintings, and you need to see them in person. And so I started out by Googling them, and I was very impressed, and I loved them very much. But I was not as in love with them until I actually got a chance to go to Russia and go to the great museums, the Russian Museum in St. Petersburg and the Tretyakov in Moscow. And it was there that I just completely was blown away by the quality of the paintings. Of course, you also have, at the school you went to, the Repin Institute, a fabulous museum on the property, which also has incredible pieces, including the piece that Feshin did for his graduation.
Exactly, yes. Mm-hmm.
So
the one with the woman and the cabbage, yes, it's quite impressive. Yeah.
Just unbelievable. Now, you had to do a graduation piece. Tell us about the kind of the process of learning that they have at the Repin Institute, and what do you do now to take some of that process when you're training your students, when you're teaching?
Well, myself, I did not do a graduation because I was a free student. But my wife, Anastasia Ducanina, studied and did a graduation. And the steps are quite, it's 6 years of learning. And during those 6 years, during the first few years, you prepare to go to a studio with a master. And then then you enter the studio, if you pass, if the master takes you. And then the last year of your 6 years, you spend a whole year just preparing your diploma work.
Right. So it's a typically a very large diploma work, and it's very complex, multiple figures, etc.
Most of the time, yes. Yeah. Yes.
Now,
it is,
I also had the pleasure of visiting the I'm not sure how to say their name, the Chakov brothers, Alexei and Sergei, had put together a school that if you were the best of the best in graduating at the Repin or the Serkov in Moscow, you then had an opportunity to be one of, I don't know, 3 or 4 people selected for another 2-year program where they would pay for all your expenses for your life and basically tell you to spend those 2 years making a monumental piece. You're aware of that?
Yes.
So
yes, this is quite an honor to go through that, of course. Yeah.
Okay. So explain to everybody, if it's possible with words, what your work looks like now compared to what you were initially trained for. Are you carrying on that tradition? Have you taken it to a different level? Help us understand that.
Well, I think it's just a normal continuation. I feel that I use the same principles. It's just I try to. So of course, when you are, it's funny because in Russia, what is considered academic drawing or academic painting is kind of look done. It's just studying, and it is asked of you to go further than that, and to try to find your own way, and to try to express yourself. It would be very often, I heard from my wife that the teacher will come to you and say, but if you paint too academic, especially during the later years, they will make fun of you and say that you're sleeping at your canvas, because they really want to push you with this knowledge into something more close to you. Because of course, if everybody was painting in an academic manner, everybody would look alike. Right. And what is interesting, it is this difference which comes from within that makes you who you are. And this is what they really push into to develop. Yeah.
Well, that, and to some degree, the opposite of that has been happening throughout some of the schools around the world, is that they are training a very academic system, and then they're encouraging, it seems to me, encouraging people to stay within the lines of that academic system, to come up with their own ideas and their own work and their own modern versions of it, but to kind of stay very, very classical in nature. So, was Plein Air a part of the agenda for you? I know they have the academic dasha in the center of Russia, where the schools would send the students to spend their summers for plein air painting, and also they had access to studios. Was that part of your training at the Repin Institute?
Well, where I learned the most was to paint with other students in plein air, of course. And I think this is it is absolutely part of the learning process, in a sense that it's a better way to free yourself from this academic knowledge, and to also find your own way as a painter. And also, there is this very important tradition to paint nature and to capture nature. And they have a special way how to see it, which was very interesting to me, which is completely different than the way that, let's say, the French Impressionist sees it, which is more soft, often, I would say, even more close to nature.
Mm-hmm.
The Russians had a more expressive way to express nature, and but still with some really strong foundation. And so I'm still trying to digest that and to explore this, of course. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Well, it's a lifetime of learning, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Which is what makes it fun. So you
Absolutely.
do some teaching. I don't know if you've been doing much teaching since the quarantine, but what are the things that you are focusing on when you're training students, when you're doing your workshops and so on?
Mm-hmm. Yes, actually, I've been doing online teaching lately, on online tuition, and it's been very good, actually. It gives the people more time to work on their process. It's very interesting. It was completely new to me. But anyway, what I like to focus when I teach, usually it happens that people want to come to a workshop to learn how to paint bold and with a lot of paint, because this is what I like to do. But this is not what I teach. I teach more about let's paint slow down when you paint in multiple sessions. Try to avoid to paint your painting, even plein air, in one session. Take time to find a spot that you're going to paint. And also the most important thing is to have a painting who looks, let's say, bold or expressive. It is learning how to separate things. It means that, like in a story, there will be like a main actor, a secondary actor, a background, and you need to do that with your painting. And one way to do it, it is to using modeling for your main character, and for your other things, maybe paint them more flat with less modeling.
Really?
The control and the understanding also of decoration in a painting. All those principles are very clear when you watch fashion paintings.
So
You will have.
So if you study fashion paintings, then the focal point is very highly modeled, but
Yes.
the rest of it is very flat.
Exactly. Yes.
Really?
It starts to flatten them and model them much less. For example, you will have a head which is very modeled, and the clothes will be more flat than the head or the hands. And this will make this difference, this separation, make this impression, or make this expressive look, and also give a bold and freshness to the painting. Because the point and the theme of the painting is very clear. It's there is no discussion of what is a painting. It makes a huge difference between a picture and a painting. On this step of painting more like this is taking a huge leap in between having a painting looking like a photograph or having a painting looking more like a painting.
So talk about how to do modeling, because I would think in your particular case, because you're using a lot of thick paint, you're actually sculpting into the paint. But modeling, you said you were not teaching your students how to paint thickly like you are. So when you talk about modeling, are you primarily talking about creating the sense of form?
Exactly. It's just building the form, giving space, and all of that is achieved by values, of course, by temperature, and by the drawing of the thing that you're painting. And having those three things together, it starts to model the form. Yes.
Okay. Talk to me about color temperature. A lot of people approach that differently. What ways do you use color temperature for modeling?
In what ways? The temperature, it's very simple. The temperature just describes the quality of the light. And so if you have a warm light, you will have warm lights and cooler shadows. And on the contrary, cooler lights and warmer shadows. And this is just, I believe that actually you should, myself, I believe that you should look at it very, very simple and actually try to, I try to avoid too many scientific ideas, to more go into the pure observation of things without overthinking it. And I feel that with this point, you avoid to over-rationalize your brushworks. And by doing that, what you observe is stays something of a pictorial thought, not a verbal thought, if that makes sense.
I'm not sure it does. How would you describe the difference between a verbal thought and a picture of thought?
Yes, exactly. It's very simple again. For example, we all had this experience when we started to paint or started to draw. There is the idea of a tree. So the tree, the idea of it will be, for example, for a Christmas tree, it is this symbol of a tree, of a Christmas tree. Or there is the tree as it is revealed by light. So, for example, just the light and shadow on a tree, instead of how the tree should look like from your mental idea.
In other words, I think what I hear you saying is that we have these impressions that come from our childhood that a tree should look like, maybe a ball on a stick, or a pine tree should look like a triangle. And
exactly.
And what you're saying is paint what you see, not what you think it should be.
Exactly. One way to do it is to avoid to overthink it, but be more into the observation. That's it. On another way to put this into an idea, it is that things that we paint only exist because of light, visually. In a sense that this tree in front of you, if it is completely dark, there is no light source, the tree disappears visually. So when you paint this tree, you're painting only the light which reveals it to you.
Right, and the light obviously carves out the form as well.
Exactly, and model it. Yeah.
Uh-huh. So, what do you think what do you typically find that your students have the most trouble with in understanding these concepts, or do they?
No, I find that, of course, at first it takes some time, but especially, when you can demonstrate, you can talk about it more, and you can show examples also in other paintings. People get it very easily, I find, in my workshops, yes.
Okay, excellent. So, talk to me about a typical workshop. What's your process? Where do you begin in your teaching process?
Yes. So usually a first day would look like I let you paint what you want without any instruction, at least in the morning. And I come and see the level of everybody. Even if they never painted, they just try it. And then, usually it's very often for me that it's easier to teach somebody who never learned to paint before. But it's okay. If they did, it's still very fun. And then usually we go, the first question which I would ask is, what do you want to say? So when they want to paint something, what do you want to say? And most of the time, they don't really know, or they have somewhat of a vague idea. But I believe that when you start a painting, or even like somebody who painted sometime can do already a lot of things. But if you start a painting and you don't know what you want to say, on what will be the theme of your painting, or the if you don't have the theme of your painting, you cannot have a composition. If you don't have if you don't have a theme of your painting, you cannot separate things, like we talked earlier. And also you start to work. So there is this problem: you start to work at the same level everywhere. And there is no direction in your painting. And this is what I try to teach people, to have a direction in their painting.
So when you talk about a theme of your painting, if I'm in a group setting with you, and you're standing in front of a view of a lake and a forest, when you say a theme, is it like, oh, I love the way the light is hitting that one tree, I want to make that my focus, my focal point? Or when you say a theme, is it, I'm trying to tell a story, and what is the story I'm trying to tell?
Well, the first example you took is already a good beginning, I believe. But of course, it is better if you can have a story, but a pictorial story, in a sense that this light, for example, I like the light on the tree and the reflection on the water. Okay, this is good, but how does the rest will fit with it? How does this main actor fit with the rest? And how, because what happened, some people are interested by this, but can they make it fit with the rest? And this is how you build the story. So yes, this is a good beginning, the light on a tree and the reflection, for example. But for example, how will it fit with a mountain? How will it fit with, and how do you make sense of it? In a sense that, how will you separate them? And this is one of the most important things to get, I believe, because even in very classical, something will look classical like Leviton, he separates things very, very much. in a sense that there will be important points, on some points less important, and how he creates this difference in between is very interesting. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to have to study Levitan again and get out my books and look at it from that perspective.
Cool.
So, it's starting to make sense to me. I think that, that I do think that's where a lot of us get lost is how do we tell a story? How do we, what is it we're trying to say? Sometimes I go out and I'm just trying to paint a beautiful spot, and I'm not really sure what it is I'm trying to say. I oftentimes will say, oh, I love the fall color in those leaves, and I really want to try and make the red of that tree stand out more than anything else, but I'm not so sure I can take it beyond that and develop a theme.
I understand. It was something that was very taught, which was taught a lot in Russian school. And that's how they get this more, let's say, more bold painting, because you can take this principle and do something very soft, like Levitan, or you can take exactly the same principle and be more radical about it, like fashion, for example.
Yeah.
Or me,
Yeah.
But me, this is why what is interesting in a thing which, since you were talking about how I teach my workshop, I try to teach things which can be applied to any different type of character, in a sense that those principles could be used for any type of painter, without having a special manner how to paint.
Right. In other words, not a particular style. In other words, it would work if you were doing a classical approach to painting versus a radical approach to painting. The same things would work.
Exactly.
So, it's difficult without a visual to be able to talk about that specifically. But the idea being, it's very much about your focal point or your primary object, I assume, and then you said the multiple actors, and so your focal point is getting more form, and then things are losing form as they go out.
Yes, and also how do they interact into each other? On a main actor, it can be very complex, in the sense that a main, or more complex. A main actor doesn't need to be one object. It can be
a section.
Yes, it can be a section. It can be multiple things, but it needs to make sense into, for example, you're painting a forest, let's say. You could take just one tree, which would be your main actor, and you make the other thing disappear more, and it will make like a forest idea. Or you could take multiple trees who become main actors, let's say, and some other trees who will be secondary actors and things like that. And so it doesn't just fit to only one object. It can be more complex. Of course, to start it, it's better to be more simple.
Yeah. So are you tending to make that main actor sharper edges, darker darks, lighter lights, more chroma, as many artists will do? Is that part of how you're accomplishing that, but then adding a little bit more sense of form into that?
Yes, it is one way to do it. There is no basic recipe for it, in the sense that every scene will have its own way to be told. Its own way to be told, and its own way to be told will decide how you do this. And so sometimes, yes, you will use a main actor will have more contrast. Sometimes more the chroma will be higher or things like that. Of course, the edges will be stronger, but maybe not always everything at the same time. It just depends on the scene. Yes.
Right. So yeah. So you're varying the edges, but you're trying to figure out where you're trying to draw the eye and how you're trying to lead the eye there.
Yes, absolutely. I believe at the end of the day, a painting is a painting. It's not just the mere representation of what is in front of you. And this is the most hard thing, I think, to develop. Painters like Bonnard were very good at it. And because one way to experience this, I believe, it is to look at paintings and to imagine those paintings as a photograph, for example, or as a scene, as it was. And you can see the leap which they took between the reality and the painting. And this leap is always very interesting as a painter, of course. And you yourself, when you're painting outside, you need to organize that leap also on how you develop it.
All right. Well, I'm going to pay closer attention to that in the future and see if I can figure that out. Talk to me about the plein air painting in France. Of course, I've got a lot of documentation that says plein air painting was going on way before the Impressionists, but the Impressionists were the ones that really made it more famous and really brought a lot of attention to it. But it seems as though the big plein air movement today is taking place throughout America. What's happening in Europe? What's happening in France in terms of plein air painting? Are there a lot of people doing it?
Yes, actually, since your magazine and your conventions, it started to come to France. I cannot talk for all Europe. It worked also in Germany. In Germany, is pretty good. I just did a plein air event in Germany in July. Also in
that was
Ireland.
the one near Frankfurt, yes?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes,
I was invited to that. Unfortunately, I couldn't travel outside of the United States.
I understand. Yes.
Yeah.
What special times we live in. Yeah. And but yes, the plein air movement was always alive. There were always some people painting plein air, but it's very much. It's not as big as America for sure, but there is a lot of even professional painters painting plein air and continuing this figurative tradition. Yes, of course we are not that much. I think in France maybe we are professional painter painting plein air and things like that for maybe 20. It's really not that much people, but it's a smaller country and it's picking up. There is a lot of people interested in it, a lot of painter learning to do it and going back to it. I think it's very good.
Well, of course, we want to see it grow worldwide. We would like, it's such an important part of making painting stronger for the painter to be able to learn the form and the light and to understand from nature things that we can't understand indoors. We can understand it when painting from a live model and so on, but it's different in landscape painting. So we, of course, want to see more and more people find it and to spread this movement across the world. And so I'm glad to hear that there's a good start. I'm hearing stories about more painters in various parts of Europe, Scotland, Ireland, England, etc. And so that's encouraging. And I know that there's a big Irish event that kind of really got things motivated again in Europe, and seems to be picking up in more plein air events around the world. I was pleased to hear about this one in Tauenstein area of Germany. I think it's Tauenstein. Yes. And that's a relatively small area, so it's encouraging indeed to hear that.
Yeah, I'm very happy about it, because for a while it was really put aside, but people understood, I think, now the importance of it, and this is a good thing.
It is a good thing. So we have an opportunity for you to say anything or talk about anything to the world of plein air painters who are listening now across 70 or 90 countries and throughout the United States and Canada, North America. What are the things that you would like to communicate to them that are the most important to you?
Well, this is quite a thing. Well, one thing I would like to talk about, which is sometimes can be overlooked as a plein air painter, is I believe that it is better to not go paint when you don't know what you're going to go paint. I believe I just try it to find spots for different weather, different light before you go paint, and then when you found your places, prepare your canvas according to it. So you will not have a precise that you use for something. You will make a canvas especially, or buy a canvas especially for this scene, and you will think about this scene before you go paint it. And I believe this way of doing can improve any painters, or at least give it a shot.
And just because of the premeditation aspect of it, is that right?
Yes, absolutely. The premeditation also, you start to think of the size of your canvas. You start to think of your palette. Instead of using the palette you use for everything, you can decide to include some different colors, to get rid of certain colors according to the scene that you're going to paint. You can also take different types of brushes, for example, and actually trying to treat each painting not in the same way. Each painting should be started and prepared and have a different type of material, which will make the process more enjoyable, more fun, and also maybe will bring something more deep into the painting.
Well, I've got to tell you that I've noticed something this past summer, this fall. I've started kind of following your advice on that, not knowing you were going to talk about it. But the idea of driving by an area, let's say I'm driving into town and I keep seeing this one spot, and I tell myself, okay, I'm going to go paint that, especially when the leaves get completely colorful. How am I going to do it? This morning I was doing it. As a matter of fact, I was thinking, how can I make that sense of glowing red leaves with the light illuminating behind them like stained glass? And so I was preparing my canvas in my mind, thinking in terms of, well, I want to get a very thin, transparent red in there and some transparent oranges and so on the canvas, and then kind of a sense of warmth throughout the underpainting, so that I can kind of carry that sense of warmth that you see in the fall. The other thing that I've noticed is that for the first time in a long time, I've set up a giant canvas, a 30 by 40, and set it up in the woods and have worked on that painting 5, 6, 7 days in a row. Not every day, but waiting for the same conditions.
Of course.
And how freeing that is without the pressure of trying to get it done right there on the spot on the first day. And also being able to have a mental break in between, so that it really allows you some time to think about the painting. And of course, you're thinking about it all the time when you're not painting.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, this is so important. It is so important. Because I think a painting in one go is only one level of that you can achieve. But by painting it multiple times, like you said, you feel more free. You can take more bolder approaches or things you would not do normally, and you surprise yourself sometimes. Mm-hmm.
Well, and what are some of the other things that you've been thinking about that you want to share?
Well, there is one thing, yes, from a French painter, French Impressionist, Alfred Sisley, a painter which I love very much.
Yeah.
And he had this point that sky is not a background per se. A sky should not be a flat thing. A sky should have some dimension. A sky should bring the mood of the painting, and also the sky reflect all the colors of the light which is on the ground. And this point, I think it's very interesting. It allows the painting to be more alive and more connected.
So you're talking about taking the colors from the ground and putting it into the sky instead of the colors from the sky and putting it into the ground.
Well, back and forth, in a sense that the warmness that you will find from the light source, the warmness that you will find on the ground should be also on the sky, and on the coolness that you find on the ground should be also on the sky, which allows a more complex sky, for example, and this make the light from the ground and the light from the sky connect into each other. And the painting is more connected, and this is very important for this sense of life and atmosphere in a painting.
Right, and is it as simple as taking some of the color from the various parts of your painting and putting it into the sky, or taking those colors, lowering the values?
Unfortunately, it's not that simple. Yes.
Okay. So how do you accomplish it?
Well, one way to because I can talk about it and I will talk about it, but the best way to look at it is look at Sisley's painting, and you will see how he interacts the two, and just think about it while looking at it. But the way he does it is the light on the ground is, he doesn't take, for example, the green on the ground and put it in the sky. But this green, the local color of a bush or something, is affected by the color of light. And it is this color of light which affects this local color, which will be repeated in the sky. So basically, this local color is bent by another color, which is a color of the light source, and this color can be repeated in the sky, and this will create a connection in between.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so in other words, if you've got a a strong light source, a strong, let's say, a strong yellow light. On the
Yeah.
ground plane, you're going to put some of that strong yellow light into the sky. But
Yeah.
yeah,
This is what usually happens where sometimes you will see when it's a midday, let's say, and you have a very strong light on the ground, usually you will have a washout sky. On this washout sky, usually have a lot of yellow in it. And yes, this is one way. And also, it will have on top of the sky, they will have maybe some more cooler temperatures, which is also used in a shadow, because of course the color of shadow come also from the sky, and this is those two things which needs to be weaved together in a painting.
all right. Well, it sounds easy, but pulling it
Yes,
off and making it look right is probably more difficult.
yes, it is. But it's good to already have it in your head. And this is another thing that I can say is I believe the best way to progress as a painter is not to paint only. It is important, but not only, because you would have a tendency to repeat the same mistake over and over and over and over.
Yeah, I know I do.
Well, I do too, but the best way it is to take time, go to museum, or if you cannot, take books and look at paintings and see how they solved the problems that you have been having in your painting, and see how imagine the painting they painted as a photograph, let's say, and see the leap which they have been doing. And this leap, it is the problem solving of painting. And this problem solving that other painter did can be useful to you and to me. And by looking at painting, you can get some new ideas in your work and to see how to treat, simplify, or express something in your painting.
So when you were at art school, did they ever have you copying Masterworks so that you could learn how they solved those problems? I
Absolutely.
I noticed when I went to Russia back in March, I went to the Tretyakov. It was a day when it was closed, and the director was walking me through, and
Cool.
there were a lot of students there who were copying paintings.
Yeah, it's very important to copy paintings, I believe. Yes.
Yeah.
Of course, to copy it will really bring you close to those problem solving. You can also looking is also very important. And with my small experience, here's the problem of copying. The problem of copying, it's very good, but it puts you too much into their style or manner. Then if you look, you can see those principles, but you're not copying the manner. And this is a huge difference between the principle and the manner, the style of doing it. And it means that a principle doesn't need to be done the same way that what you see on this painting, but can be done in different ways. This is a problem of copying sometimes, that you can get too much into the manner of somebody. And so being careful with that.
Well, I think that's always a problem, is that we go to workshops and we end up adopting the manner of the person who we're studying under, because we like what they do, but they've already done that. You want to come up with your own feeling and your own style. Well, this has been a fascinating hour, and it's gone by very quickly. Do you have any final thoughts before we part?
Well, Um,
There's so
the
much in all of this.
Yes. uh, my final thought is, as a painter, one thing to do, which was very important to me, it was when I moved to when I was going to Russia very often. It is that when I was going to villages to paint for 3 months, and this is, if you can do it, organize yourself to do it, to take some time just to paint, and really uh, away from the day-to-day life. And this this experience, if you can do it to yourself, will make your paintings better.
Well, that's why I do my retreats.
Exactly.
Because most of us, even professional painters, we don't have the time. You know, we're busy working on our businesses, our marketing, or we're dealing with our family or our kids, or cooking dinners or cleaning up or
Yes.
whatever is yard work. And so when you come to a retreat that's not a workshop, you're only working on your painting, and you're doing it all day, every day for a week or two. I'm taking a group to Russia, for instance, in 2021. We're going to go into we're going to start out in St. Petersburg. We're going to go see the sites, but we're going to also paint around some of these sites. We're going to go inland to the old villages, and then end up in Moscow before we head out. And the whole goal there is to immerse yourself in Russian art. The idea is we'll go to the great museums that we talked about earlier. We're going to go over to the Repin Academy, to the Serkov Institute. We're going to be immersing ourselves so that we have an opportunity. I think that Nikolai Dubovik from the Serkov is going to be with us. And he won't necessarily be teaching workshops, but he'll be working with people and giving them ideas and thoughts. And I think that immersive experience is really going to be valuable.
This is the best way, I believe. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Did you have a chance to study with Plein when you were at the Repin?
Yes, Plein, I know him very well. Yes.
Well, as we're recording this, we just released, I think, the first video done of Plein, and maybe of any of the instructors from the Repin. What would you tell people about studying under someone like that?
Plein?
Yeah.
Get the DVD first, because it's quite an opportunity to see him paint. He was, because now he's not a teacher, but he's a wonderful artist, and he has also very good ideas, and clean ideas on how to paint and how to draw. He was mostly a drawing teacher. Yes. And his way to look at the process of painting is so refreshing, and also I don't know, just very clean, and I highly recommend to watch him paint. It's quite an experience.
It really is. I had the pleasure of sitting there and watching for 5 days, and every time I thought I've had him figured out, he changed something and did something new and different. And every time I turned around, he was like manipulating paint in new ways, using different tools. And what I expected that he was going to do was never the case. He always did something different, which was absolutely fascinating to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, this has been absolutely fascinating. I really love talking to you. I hope that we all get a chance to go to one of your workshops or visit you in France. And where can people find your work? What is your website?
My website is www.antoninpassemard.com. And
I'm going to spell that for them. It's
yes.
Antonin, last name Passemard.com.
And you can find my work in some galleries in United States also. There is a um, Hagen Gallery in Charleston, South Carolina.
Yeah, I love Karen.
Karen is great, yeah. And there is a Ezel Gallery in Cincinnati, and there is a Signature Gallery in Paso Robles, California.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I really appreciate you taking the time and giving us some great thoughts on painting.
Thank you, Eric. It was great.
Okay, thank you again to Antonin Passemard. Are you guys ready for some marketing ideas?
This is the Marketing Minute with Eric Rhoads, author of the #1 Amazon bestseller, Make More Money Selling Your Art. Proven techniques to turn your passion into profit.
So I made a deal with my team. I said, you put the questions in, and I'm not going to read them until I actually record live on the podcast, because I want to just go off the top of my head rather than having any scripted things. So this is from Ellen Jean Dietrich in Fargo, North Dakota, who says, right now my single biggest marketing challenge is that I am not meeting new customers. Almost all my shows have been canceled and very few came to my last event. What's the best alternative for finding new customers right now? Well, it's a misnomer. New customers are the thing everybody wants to chase. By the way, you probably hear a chainsaw in the background. I apologize for that. The neighbors are cutting down trees. I can't do anything about that. Anyway, we all tend to focus on new business all the time, but the people who bought from you are the best possible people to buy from you, again, because they already have shown that they love your work and they're willing to spend money for it. I would suggest a campaign that really reaches out to past buyers and makes them aware of things that you've done recently, because that's really where the money lies, and probably more than new customers. New customers are a challenge because you got to find them, you got to reach them, you got to sell them, you got to teach them about yourself. Then you got to find people that love them. And of course, if you want new customers, the place to go is where there's a deep, rich group of people who love the kind of art that you do, and that's places like PleinAir Magazine or Fine Art Connoisseur or other things like that, where you can find a concentrated group of people who buy art. You can also focus on doing some things locally. Shows will come back, and of course, people start coming to events again. But in the meantime, I would go after existing customers because they're a lot easier to sell. Now, here's a question from Matthew Calaveri in Lincoln, Nebraska, who says, I love to paint nocturnes, but I don't know if there's a specific market for this. If there is, how do I find my way into it? Well, you guys are asking a lot of the same questions. And I think the answer to that is don't look for the market. Let the market find you. And if you love to paint nocturnes, then that's what you should paint. And if that's if you're painting for a market, if you're trying to paint because you know people are going to buy Little Red Barns and you don't love painting Little Red Barns, I highly recommend against it. It's going to show in your work. I remember there was an artist who decided he was going to conquer the Western market, and he started painting all this Western stuff, and you could just tell his heart was not into it. You know, if somebody's heart's into it, you can see it in their work. And so if you love nocturnes, paint nocturnes. Carl Gretzky does paint other things, but he's known as a nocturne guy, and he sells a lot of nocturnes, and a lot of people buy them. So is there a place you can go? Is there like a nocturnes magazine? No, you're going to go after people who love great paintings. And if you find people who love great paintings in certain places, that's where you want to be. You want to be doing art shows. You want to be promoting locally. You want to be promoting nationally. I think every artist should have a local and a national strategy because, let's say that you live, at the time I'm recording this, quarantine is still going on in California, right? So if you can't get out in California, people can't get out in California, that's your only gallery, you got a little bit of a problem, and that's your local market. So, but if you had a gallery in, say, Florida, and Florida's open, then everybody's out and about and business as usual. So you can make sure that you have a local and a national strategy. You have 2 or 3 galleries in 2 or 3 different places where there's stuff that's going to sell, and that will make a big difference. And so rather than trying to find a specific market for nocturnes, somebody asked a question last week about finding a specific market for modern or abstract kind of things, and I kind of had the same answer. Abstract is a little bit broader, so you might find a place where you can advertise and get to abstract people, but advertising is key if you really want to get seen. Anyway, I hope that answers your question. Thanks for asking about marketing.
This has been the Marketing Minute with Eric Rhoads. You can learn more at artmarketing.com.
All right, I want to tell you guys that I'm online every day at 12 noon Eastern time. I'm going on just to be there for you guys. I've got a lot of different artists I've been interviewing. We're doing art marketing. We're doing art shows. We're doing all kinds of things. 12 noon on Facebook, on my Facebook or Streamline Art Video Facebook. And also it's on YouTube on Streamline Art Video. Plus we're giving out 3 p.m. every day video samples of some of the things that we've produced. And so you can go on there and find them. I want to remind you guys that Realism Live is coming up, and you want to sign up for this. At least, if do nothing else, go and look at the website. It's 5 days if you include the Beginner's Day. Even if you don't do anything else, if you're a beginner, go to the Beginner's Day. This is worldwide. We have people all over the world. I think 30 countries now signed up. We got like 15 or 20 just in Australia alone. Anyway, it is very cool. It's realismlive.com, and it's coming up on the 20th. Fall Color Week is coming up next week on the 12th. And so if you want to get in the car and come up to New Hampshire and get online real quick, see if you can get a room. But come to Fall Color Week. It's an event that we do, and everything's included, your room, your meals, etc. I might not have a badge for you this late, but you can try and see if we can get you in. All right. Anyway, thank you guys. Make sure you enter your paintings in the PleinAir Salon. Also, if you've not seen my blog about life and art and other things, it's called Sunday Coffee. You can find it at coffeewitheric.com. This is always fun. We'll do it again sometime like next week, God willing. I'll see you then. I'm Eric Rhoads, publisher and founder of PleinAir Magazine, and you can find us online at outdoorpainter.com. Remember, it's a big world out there, a big, big world. Go paint it. We'll see you. Bye-bye.
This has been the PleinAir Podcast with PleinAir Magazine's Eric Rhoads. You can help spread the word about plein air painting by sharing this podcast with your friends. And you can leave a review or subscribe on iTunes so it comes to you every week. And you can even reach Eric by email, eric@pleinairmagazine.com. Be sure to pick up our free ebook, 240 plein air painting tips by some of America's top painters. It's free at pleinairtips.com. Tune in next week for more great interviews. Thanks for listening.